press on because I really want to get onto this issue of pay equity. And look, here are some statistics. They don't look good. I'm going to skip over it because I really want to... No, I don't want to downplay it, but I really want to get to a really exciting issue that Susan brought to my attention a couple of days ago. And I really want to focus on what's happening in the UK. I will mention Iceland. Iceland's put in some new laws that's made unequal pay illegal and unlawful, and there can be fines and the like. And I was going to ask Susan, well, surely do we need such laws in Australia? Isn't it already unlawful? And Susan would have said, yes, it's already unlawful, and here's the definition. I want to get straight to what is happening in the UK because this is being looked at here, and it's really exciting, alarming, confronting. So Susan, what's happening in the UK?
I'm going to get to that in 1 minute, but there's a couple of important things to know, and it's interesting because it picks up what Amber mentioned, that, you know, I've heard Mary Gaudron say, we got equal pay in 1975, we got it again in 1992, we got it again in 1999, but we still have a gender pay gap. So why is that? It is unlawful currently, and has been for a long time under Australian law, to pay a man a different rate to a woman for doing exactly the same job. So that's not controversial. What is more difficult though, I mean there are challenges with that because how do you know, right? How do you know what the bloke next to you is earning, and perhaps there were different reasons for your pay. Australian law though has grappled with the concept of equal pay for work of equal value. So a lot of the pay cases you see, and there's not many because they're very difficult to establish, and I think the childcare sector is struggling with this, is to say, look, as an occupation, childcare is undervalued compared to, and then you've got to find another occupational category that isn't looking after small children but is as similar to... Right, it's too hard. And the Fair Work Commission over and over again says, look, we're not convinced on the evidence that you've presented, go away. So the basic premise is that it's unlawful to pay people differently because of their sex, but we have challenges around feminised occupations, we have challenges around the fact that there are simply more men in higher paid positions than women. And so when that stat comes out every year that says the gender pay gap in Australia is insert number between 15 and 20%, people go, oh, does that mean I'm getting paid 20% less than the bloke sitting next to me? No, it doesn't. It means that overall in Australia, full-time female wages and full-time male wages are that percentage different. In the UK, the reporting closed yesterday. One of the ways they have tried to tackle this is to introduce a requirement for companies or organisations that employ more than 250 people need to publicly report to a government agency both the mean and the median pay in their workforces on base pay and bonus pay, and present the segmentation of their workforce divided into 4 pay quartiles, and the percentage of the people in the top quartile that are men and women, the percentage in the second quartile, so on, so on. So that, for anyone who's really interested in this, I encourage you to go and look at the UK website. You can search by organisation. So I did a couple of quick searches last night. The information's really clear and easy to understand, and I think this morning when I had a look, 9 out of 10 reporting organisations are showing a gender pay gap in favour of men. Not really surprising. What I think is fascinating though is if you look at the report and you look at the stats, and we were talking about Karen Millen this morning. For those of you who don't know, Karen Millen is a fashion brand. They've got a shop in QVB. They have something like 86% of their workforce are female. When it comes to their bonus pay gap though, there's, I think the stat is, a 96% difference between the mean pay bonus for men and the mean pay bonus for women, right? So you look at that and you think, how can that be? When you look at their quartiles, they're overwhelmingly women, 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 but on the bonus calculation, men are getting paid significantly more. Now, what's really interesting is that as well as just the numbers, organisations prepare a statement explaining it. And I tell you what, if the PR and desktop publishing industry has had a boost in the UK, it's largely due to this reporting.
But Susan, certainly the reporting in the UK is more detailed than Australia reporting.
Yeah.
And with that reporting, the company needs to provide a statement from someone fairly senior.
Yep.
And that statement needs to address certain matters, but critically it appears that it's forcing companies to not only put a positive spin on their figures which don't look good, but really identify what might be the source or a reason for the explanation.
So I think for anyone in the room who does our workplace gender equality agency reporting, you're already probably collecting very similar information and reporting it to the agency. The agency uses that information to produce its results later in the year, but your pay information doesn't form part of your public report. That's what's different with the UK. And it's different because it also requires this calculation of mean and median and the quartiles. What I think is really fascinating is, one, there are no consequences yet for not disclosing. Now, the government in the UK is saying, oh, we'll need to look at it and it's the first year. It'll be interesting to see if sanctions do end up being imposed and what they are. But it's clearly making organisations, I think for some of them, for the first time, actually go back and look at their pay data and work out what are our numbers and what's our explanation of those numbers. So if nothing else, it's a mechanism for forcing that analysis.
So in other words, when you look and see that there's a 96% pay gap in bonus, and you realise, well, the bonuses only go to senior people and therefore our problem is that we only have males in the top roles.
Correct.
This approach is really forcing, in a public way, for the problem to come to the surface.
Correct. And what will be interesting is this is the first year of the reporting. It'll be interesting next year to see whether organisations have taken any steps to change anything, whether things have improved, not improved. But just the mere fact that people are looking at those numbers, I think, is important. And interestingly, we talked about the Me Too hashtag. There's now a hashtag #PayMeToo. And if you look at it, that's a really interesting coalition of UK politicians, cross-party. They've got together and they've listed just a couple of simple steps. So what should you do if you think you're being underpaid? Quite radically, the first one says, ask your male co-worker what they earn. Now, we sort of laugh uncomfortably about that because as employers, you don't see it as often now written into people's contracts that you're not to discuss your pay, but we've created a culture that pay is confidential and people are discouraged from talking about pay, and of course that means that you simply don't know if you're paid less than the person sitting next to you. That's their first thing. Their second thing, join a union. The third thing, if there's no union, get together a group of women and start to agitate collectively. So I think as employers, it'll be interesting to see whether just the presence of this in the UK flows on here. We already have the agency that collects the data. It wouldn't be that much of a stretch for them to start saying, now we want these additional things done and we're going to make it public. Probably won't happen under a Liberal government. But I think we're going to see a push for greater transparency.
I think that's inevitable, and certainly one of the big fours and certainly Energy Australia recently have said that they're going to be quite aggressive and public in reducing the pay gap. I'm conscious of the time. Anyone want to ask some tough questions? No?
Well, if I can keep talking about pay...
Well, one tough question, you know. The male fear. On the weekend, there was on Twitter, and I've extracted it, a case of a male not getting a job, even though they were better qualified and being awarded an amount of compensation. Now, quotas, targets and the like, how do we get the advancement of women in the workplace at all levels right?
Look, first of all, if this guy was discriminated against because he was a bloke, well, he should have been awarded, right? I mean, this is the thing. It's
right.
actually about levelling the playing field. It's not about giving women an extra advantage. It's about creating equal opportunities. I'm really encouraged by transparency, by the fact that people are being emboldened, I think, to make complaints, to ask questions, to push their employers to do the hard work. I think employers have sort of got away lightly because no one's really been pushing them. And I think they're all things that are going to drive change, along with what we're seeing is the social movement for change. So, Pussy Hats, Me Too, Tracy Spicer's Now organisation. I think we're having very different conversations than we were even 5 years ago. So I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but if you can thank him for one thing, it's probably for unifying the feminist movement.
Look, I think certainly, I don't know where to go after Trump, but I think certainly it is a case that all of these social issues are now at the forefront, and it's a great thing. It makes for a real interesting time as employers. Please thank our panellists for their insights today. I thank everyone for attending, and I hope you have a good